Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Great Malabite Efeni.
Good morning, Ruben.
Good morning.
We've been reliably informed.
Yes.
Your name spotted in some of the lists.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, no, we'll discuss that after
I'm sure you don't want me to go anywhere.
We'll discuss that.
You feel lonely. One Malabite out of the show makes you feel
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai.
Mr. Feni,
Yes.
please. For the sake of that, someone just mentioned that a name was spotted. Dr. Abati, do implication on Friday. For the fact that we know it might not, there's nothing, no, but just do implication on this Friday.
Okay, let's start the review with this day, Nigeria's newspaper
Go
of
on to
record.
respond like somebody responded on this show.
Now, the list.
If the president calls me to come and serve the country, I will say I'm available. I will turn against the video. I say I'm available.
Okay, Ruben, let's start the review with this day, Nigeria's newspaper of record. The lead story, APC may have settled for Ganduje as new national chair. Pencils in Oyetola for national secretary, ex-Osun governor, not keen because of Goba bid. Adamu Omishore served us well, says party's governors. Well, of course, the search for the next chairman, indications are that the party, or better still, the president may have just settled for somebody he trusts. Abdullahi Ganduje, the immediate past governor of Kano State, and he has also looked the way of Osun State, where Oyetola, yes, former governor Oyetola, who happens to be referred to, I think he's the cousin or nephew of the president. So a relation, you may say, a trusted one again as the secretary designate, if we may just use that word for now. But the story is saying that Oyetola seems not to be keen because he still has his gubernatorial ambition intact to return to State House in Oshogbo someday. And he's recommending somebody else in person of Senator Ajibola Bashiru. Well, this thing seems to be going around in a certain circle. But the president has his men in the National Assembly. He wants to put his men in charge of the party. Well, I'm not surprised. Here was a man, even when he was not president, he went by the title, leader of the party. Now, as the president is the leader of the party, I don't know whether he will relinquish the other leader to somebody else, but I don't think that will happen. So he wants to be in control, but you want to ask, what manner of democracy is this? One man taking charge, putting his pick in key positions. Yes, Ruben, you referred to Baba Sokwe. I said it last week that the worst form of rubber stamp is the Baba Sokwe version that you have in Lagos. Well, if it is migrating to the national level, no surprise, because the men from Lagos are in charge. As we'll see in this course of this review. Now, the Daily Trust newspaper also reporting that story, Ganduje tipped as APC national chair. Tinubu Shetima hosts ex-governor Uzodimma, two others. Now, the Guardian newspaper, banks, firms in currency risk, capital erosion crisis as dollar hits 850 naira. Well, the floating of the naira, of course, when you float, you know what happens. And that's what we're seeing. So we cannot complain too much about the value of the naira. As they say, perhaps water is finding its level, unlike the enforced value of the naira that we have witnessed over the years, where the CBN come out to say, we are defending the naira.
They are still defending, Mr. Feni.
Are you sure?
Yes, this is a managed float. If it was not a managed float, it should have been more than this.
Well, it is floating.
The CBN is defending this one. It's a managed float.
It is floating, Rufai.
Managed float. So it's because of their money.
Leave the adjective managed out of this matter.
Oh, yeah.
The naira has been floating, and it is floating. Now,
I get it now. It's
Nigerian Tribune newspaper, 7 key consequences of petrol price hike on Nigerians, experts prefer solutions on how to mitigate hardship. PDP, CUPP say it's insensitive, provocative, coercive, directs lecturers to go to work twice a week. Coercive, that's the academic union in the colleges of education, asking their workers to go to work, lecturers to go to work twice a week. Well, poor being choked. Tinubu adding salt to our injuries. Nigerians lament. Marketers suggest alternative energy to motorists. Now, the 7, according to the Nigerian Tribune, listed out 7 ways fuel pump price hike is hurting Nigerians by experts. 1, policies bringing citizens below poverty line. 2, consumer spending, purchasing power declining. 3, manufacturers producing below installed capacities. 4, employers likely to downsize workforce. 5, 50% increase in cost of goods and services. 6, apart from food insecurity, other emergencies likely. And 7, criminality will increase as poverty rates grow. Well, the Nigerian Tribune listing the 7 consequences of the fuel price hike. Now, it's not all gloom and doom, and we must pay attention because there's a boom somewhere. The Nation newspaper is reporting 1.959 trillion naira allocation windfall for federal government, states, and councils coming in from the month of June. And that amount is more than 50% of what the 3 tiers of government shared between January and May. So, as a result of the removal of fuel subsidy, more funds available to the 3 tiers of government to share. That is 184% increase over what was shared in May. In May, 786.1 billion naira shared by the 3 tiers of government. And I think this is where we should pay attention. While we are crying and shouting about the impact of fuel subsidy removal, states are going to get more. What are the states going to do? We must pay attention and shine our eyes, as Nigerians will say. Because before you know it, these state governors will funnel this money into security votes, of course, where there is a conduit for wastage. So, state governors, we must pay attention to them. Borno state government already done something on palliative, buying buses for farmers and other workers. Bayelsa government also followed suit, buying buses for workers. What are other states doing? We cannot all the states cannot just be looking at the federal government, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to provide all the palliatives. They are getting more money now, much more money. So we must pay attention to how state governments are going, and the local government councils, how they are going to use these funds for the betterment of the citizens, so that they can get the dividends of democracy, to use that hackneyed phrase. Now, the New Telegraph newspaper, 2 stories just beside the photograph I will look at. House standing committees, Gbajabiamila Abbas on war path over juicy positions. When I tell you the Lagos boys are taking charge in Abuja, Gbajabiamila, who is now the chief of staff to the president, still having a say, wanting to having a say in who becomes what, by way of chairman of juicy committees in the National Assembly. Now, the second story there in the front page of New Telegraph, Clerk to Tinubu, don't scrap Niger Delta amnesty program. Tackles Yerima Lagbaja on equating Niger Delta agitators with bandits. Reps confirm service chief's appointment. Now, the Vanguard newspaper. I will just leave the lead story there and go above the masthead. The first story there, Emefiele. Lawyers tackle DSS over charge and bail tweet as Emefiele asks court to grant him bail. The next story, Plateau. Troops seized 1,000 cows grazing community farmland. You see why? There's always crisis in the Plateau. 1,000 cows grazing on community farmland. Of course, if the soldiers don't intervene, of course, we know what that will result to. Perhaps another round of communal clashes and killings. Now, the other story, Ganduje Al-Makura battle for APC chairmanship. Well, according to this report, Al-Makura, the former governor of Nasarawa State, is still in reckoning when it comes to the chair of APC, the search for the chairman of APC. And of course, in the run-off to having Adamu as chair, he was also a contender. Now, the foreign newspapers quickly. The Times of London. Banks told to respect free speech. They could lose licenses for barring customers as Farage threatens to take a bank to court. Now, Ruben, I know you've been very anxious because you have several platforms where you talk, and the banks in Nigeria can just decide to buy you from using their facilities. But be rest assured, free speech is at the center of democracy. Nobody is going to allow that to happen. And of course, the Treasury in England, they're also taking action to say, no, you don't buy a man just because of his views. To say, oh, it doesn't meet our values as such. Now, the New York Times is reporting Kremlin warns it will enforce naval blockade, attack spots again. Russia is using food as leverage in the war in Ukraine. Now, the other story there, climate talk with U.S. failed to sway China. Yes, John Kerry was in China recently, but the Chinese are saying we want to pursue our goals at our own pace. Of course, diplomacy being employed there. Telling was in China, and of course, Blinken was in China. But if you look at the photograph in front page of the New York Times, that is 100 years old Henry Kissinger, an embodiment of diplomacy, being visited by Chinese foremost envoy. So perhaps
Kissinger divides history.
Yes.
He divides history. But real quickly, they will not be able to do that, Dr. Abati. You know why? The real story I've now come to discover is that Mr. Nigel Farage not get the money. That's why he was dropped, really. All the other talk about free speech is just an add-on. He did meet the threshold, the £1 million or £3 million threshold. Now money issue. So
anyway, quickly, I would like to talk about two things. The first is to commiserate with the literary community in Nigeria, the people of Akure, and all the persons who were privileged to have been students of Professor Bankole Ajibabi Omotosho, popularly known as Kole Omotosho.
Yeah, if you put the Punch newspaper there.
When we were growing up, we had these professors in different departments of drama, literature, English, across the country, but their influence went beyond their main location. They were icons. And Professor Kole Omotosho fell into that category. He was in Ife, but his influence as a writer went beyond the precincts of the University of Ife, where he later went to. He used to teach Arabic studies at the University of Ibadan. Abi obtained his PhD in Arabic studies, studying an Arabic writer at the University of Edinburgh.
Yes.
And then he went on to the University of Ife to teach at the drama department. And many of his writings helped to nurture a generation.
It's on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Renowned Nigerian writer Kole Omotosho dies at 80.
Yeah, many of his writings helped to nurture a generation of Nigerian writers and artists. Many will remember The Combat. Many will remember Just Before Dawn, which was a major writing. Many who studied dramatic literature, we remember his Achebe or Shoyinka, something about contrast. Many will remember his many works, many contributions. Memories of the Recent Boom is another example. The Sacrifice is another example. And he went to South Africa to teach at the University of Stirling and the University of Stellenbosch, where he was in the drama department. And he became popular in South Africa as the Yebogogo man when he appeared in an advert for Vodacom and became one of the major popular cultural figures in South Africa. He died after a brief illness, we're told, at the age of 80. For many of us, who were his students. You know, it's painful because that generation helped to nurture a whole generation of public intellectuals, scholars, and he was, you know, a prominent figure in that regard. So we commiserate with his family and with the literary community. Well, may he journey well. Okay, since there's no time, I would have loved to talk about Britain and the fight over Falklands that the EU has recognized as Malvinas. I hope there will not be a repeat of 1982 incident over the naming of that controversial island in Argentina. Thank you very much. Emmanuel Efe.